Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 4 in our Foundations for Teaching ELLs. Chapter 4 really covers policy and meeting the needs of our English language learners. A lot of these things continue to change year by year, so I may skip over them or tell you what you need to know that's more current. But beginning with 67, the terms here, probably the biggest change is Common Core Standards, which is CCSS Common Core. Especially in New York State, we've really moved away from Common Core and we now use next generation teaching standards. I posted those next gen teaching standards, and for ESL, ELL, ENL, whatever we're calling it here in New York State, we call it all of these. We do use the ELA, Next Generation Teaching Standards. There's nothing special for English language learners. We just use the English Language Arts teaching standards for the grades. So I posted those. You'll begin to use those next week. We'll talk about lesson planning. I'll go over a blank lesson plan, and we'll need those next generation teaching standards. But jumping ahead, there's a little bit of the historical perspective, and there's a little bit about bilingualism, and it's important to understand the difference between bilingual ed and TESOL, and we've talked about that. Bilingual ed, you're using the native language to teach the target language. In ESL, we use the target language to teach the target language. It talks a little bit about the schools and the history of education, which most of you learned a little bit about in 185, the Bilingual Act, and then it jumps into 2001 with No Child Left Behind. We're well past No Child Left Behind. That was really a push towards standardized testing. So you should reread this. Most of you have learned this now in your last few years of education courses. Again, it comes up with a lot of different terms. One was limited English proficient, LEP. When I first started the field, we were called LEP teachers or LEP students. Talks a little bit about LEP and Title III for services for ELLs. So just read through it. These are things you really won't be tested on, but it's nice to know actually a little bit of the history. Then we had Obama, who moved away from No Child Left Behind and moved towards Race to the Top, which is RTTT, Race to the Top. And it talks a little bit about making sure that we adopt the right standards to meet all the learners' needs. The big idea for Race to the Top was separating teacher performance from student performance in these standardized tests. When students took our standardized tests, I was an English teacher and ESL teacher, how the students did was it was posted often, and you could see how your students performed and what teacher had strong students and what teachers didn't. And Race to the Top is trying to separate that out so the accountability doesn't fall so much on the teachers, especially when the tests we now know are really unfair, these standardized tests. So be sure you just read that and are familiar with it. We jump ahead to state-led initiatives. We have Common Core Standards. It does mention a little bit next generation standards. Again, New York State really has moved into next generation standards. And you can flip through those on the website. Well, you're going to be in those next week anyway. Let's see. And then we're going to jump over to the WIDA, which is the World Class Instructional Design and Assessment. Those are the proficiency levels and WIDA guidelines. Again, we don't do this in New York State, but be sure to read through this. This is on page 81 for those of you that might travel or go to other states. It's important just to understand what WIDA is, and that WIDA is there to better meet the needs of our ELLs by really having defined proficiency levels and guidelines for both learners and teachers. Then we have state policies under page 82, and again it talks about each different states and what different states do. You only need to be concerned about New York State for those under New York State certification. For those in the minors or the certificates, you don't even have to worry about states because you'll be teaching overseas. Let's see, and then we go into 84, page 84. There's some landmark cases, of course. We know that Brown versus Board of Education, we learned all about this. And Lau versus Nichols, that was the first case where bilingual education in Oakland in 1974. The family of Lau felt that education be taught in Chinese. And so they sued the district, and of course that's when we came up with bilingual ed, that if students don't speak English, then we should deliver the content area in their heritage language. So the Lau versus Nichols is an important landmark case for our area. Let's see, and then that's about it. Then you can, a little bit in language policy at the local level. That's it. So chapter 4 is really on policy. It changes so much. It's so fluid. It'll continue to change year by year, but read through it and just make sure you're familiar with just the points I mentioned. That's it, short for chapter 4, and I'll see you next week. Actually, I'll see you in the next video talking about a little bit about the course requirements.